The sun was barely coming up when Maya stepped out of her small farmhouse. She stretched her arms wide and took a deep breath of the cool morning air. Most people in the town were still sleeping, but Maya had work to do. She walked over to the barn where 20 heavy hay bales were waiting for her. Without any help, Maya picked up the first bale. It weighed almost as much as a full-grown man, but she lifted it like it was nothing more than a bag of groceries. One by one, she carried each bale from the barn to the storage area. Other farmers in the area needed 3 or 4 workers to do this job. Maya did it all by herself, and she wasn't even breathing hard when she finished. This was Maya's daily routine. Her father had left her the farm when he passed away 2 years ago. Everyone in town expected her to sell it and move to the city like most young women her age. Instead, Maya decided to keep the farm and run it entirely on her own. At first, people laughed and said she would fail within a month. Now, 2 years later, her farm was doing better than most others in the area. Maya was different from other women in town. She stood almost 6 feet tall and had shoulders that looked like they could carry the world. Her hands were strong from years of hard work, and her arms had muscles that made grown men feel embarrassed about their own strength. But Maya wasn't just physically strong. She had a sharp mind for business and a heart that cared deeply about her land and animals. The people in town had mixed feelings about Maya. Some respected her for taking care of herself and keeping her father's farm alive. Others whispered behind her back, saying it wasn't natural for a woman to be so strong. The young men in town seemed especially uncomfortable around her. They would cross the street to avoid talking to her or make jokes about her strength when they thought she couldn't hear them. Maya tried not to let it bother her. She had her farm, her animals, and her work. That was enough to keep her busy and happy most days. But sometimes, especially in the evenings when she sat alone on her porch, she wondered if she would ever find someone who could see past her strength to the person she really was inside. Every Saturday, the town held a small market in the central square. Maya would bring vegetables from her farm to sell. She enjoyed these days because she got to talk to people and catch up on town news. But even at the market, her strength would somehow become the topic of conversation. One Saturday morning, old Mr. Johnson, who ran the general store, was having trouble moving some heavy boxes of supplies. Maya saw him struggling and offered to help. She picked up 3 boxes at once and carried them into his store like they weighed nothing at all. A small crowd gathered to watch, and soon people were talking about Maya's incredible strength again. "I bet she could arm wrestle any man in this town and win," said Mrs. Peterson, the baker's wife. "She probably could," agreed Tom, who worked at the hardware store. "I've never seen anyone as strong as Maya." Maya felt her cheeks getting red. She didn't like being the center of attention, especially when people talked about her like she was some kind of circus act. She tried to change the subject, but people kept asking questions about her strength and making comments about how unusual she was. The annual county fair was coming up in a few weeks, and someone mentioned that there would be arm wrestling competitions, like every year. The men's competition was always popular, with farmers and workers from all over the county coming to test their strength against each other. "Maya should enter the competition," joked someone from the crowd. "She'd probably beat everyone there." Maya laughed, but inside she was getting frustrated. She was tired of people always focusing on her strength and making her feel like she was strange or different. She was tired of men being intimidated by her and treating her like she was some kind of monster instead of just a regular person who happened to be strong. That evening, Maya's younger sister Lily came to visit. Lily was everything Maya wasn't. Petite, delicate, and married to a nice man from the next town over. They sat on Maya's porch drinking tea and watching the sunset. "The whole town is talking about you again," Lily said gently. "They're saying you might enter the arm wrestling competition at the fair." Maya sighed. "I don't want to enter any competition. I just want people to see me as a normal person, not as some kind of oddity." Maybe you should think about it, Lily suggested. You've been alone on this farm for 2 years now. Don't you want to meet someone and start a family? Of course I do, Maya replied. But look at me, Lily. What man wants a wife who's stronger than he is? What man wants a wife who can lift hay bales and wrestle bulls? The men in this town are afraid of me. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Maybe the right man won't be afraid of you. Maybe the right man will admire your strength instead of being intimidated by it. Maya thought about her sister's words, but she wasn't convinced. She had seen how men reacted to her. They either made jokes about her strength, or they avoided her completely. Some seemed almost angry that a woman could be stronger than they were. Maya was beginning to think that maybe she would never find someone who could love her for who she truly was. The fair came and went. Maya didn't enter the arm wrestling competition, but she did attend to sell her vegetables and enjoy the festivities. She watched as the men competed, grunting and straining against each other while crowds cheered. She knew she could beat most of them without much effort, but she kept that thought to herself. After the fair, life went back to normal. Maya continued working her farm and taking care of herself, but the loneliness was getting harder to ignore. She would see young couples walking together in town or families with children playing in their yards, and she would feel a pain in her heart that had nothing to do with physical strength. 1. Evening in late autumn, Maya was in Johnson's general store buying supplies. The store was crowded with men who had finished their work for the day and were standing around talking and joking with each other. Maya tried to mind her own business and get what she needed, but she could feel their eyes on her as she moved through the store. She was reaching for a bag of flour on a high shelf when one of the men made a comment that everyone could hear. There goes Maya again, doing things the hard way. Why doesn't she just ask someone to help her like a normal woman would? Maya felt her anger rising, but she tried to stay calm. She continued shopping, but the comments kept coming. I heard she moved 50 fence posts by herself last week, said another man. That's not natural for a woman. Maybe she's not really a woman, joked a third man, and several others laughed. Maya had heard enough. She turned around to face the group of men, her eyes flashing with anger and frustration. The store went quiet as everyone waited to see what would happen. You all have a lot to say about my strength, Maya said, her voice steady but loud enough for everyone to hear. You make jokes and comments like I'm some kind of freak show. Well, I'm tired of it. The men looked uncomfortable, but nobody said anything. Maya continued, her voice getting stronger. You want to know about my strength? Fine. I challenge any one of you to a contest. Any kind of contest you want. Arm wrestling, lifting, whatever you think you can beat me at. She paused and looked around the room at all the faces staring at her. Then, in a moment that would change her life forever, Maya laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh, but a laugh full of frustration and challenge. Actually, you know what? I'll do better than that. I'll marry any human being who can beat me in a fair contest of strength. Any person at all. The room erupted in nervous laughter and whispered conversations. Some men shook their heads in disbelief. Others made jokes about Maya's challenge. But Maya stood there serious and determined, knowing that she had just made a promise that would either bring her the love she was looking for or prove once and for all that she was destined to be alone. As the crowd slowly dispersed and people went back to their conversations, Maya finished her shopping and headed home. She had no idea that her bold challenge would soon spread far beyond the walls of that little general store, or that it would eventually bring someone into her life who would change everything she thought she knew about strength, love, and what it meant to find your perfect match. Maya woke up the next morning thinking her life would go back to normal. She had no idea that her words from the night before were already spreading through the town like wildfire. By the time she finished her morning chores, 3 people had already stopped by her farm to ask if she really meant what she said at the general store. The first visitor was Mrs. Henderson, the postmaster's wife. She knocked on Maya's door with excitement in her eyes and barely waited for Maya to invite her in before she started talking. "Maya, dear, is it true what everyone's saying? Did you really challenge every man in town to a strength contest? And did you really say you'd marry whoever beats you?" Maya felt her stomach drop. She had spoken in anger last night, but now she realized there was no taking back her words. The whole town would be watching to see if she would keep her promise. "Yes," Maya said quietly. "I meant every word." Mrs. Henderson's eyes grew wide. "Well, I never. This is the most exciting thing to happen in our little town in years." The second visitor was old Pete, who worked at the newspaper office. He came with a notebook and pencil, asking Maya questions about her challenge. He wanted to know exactly what she had said and what kind of contest she had in mind. "This is big news, Maya," Pete said, scribbling notes as fast as he could. "People are going to want to read about this. Mind if I write a story for the paper?" Maya realized she couldn't stop the news from spreading, so she agreed to the interview. She told Pete about her challenge and made it clear that she was serious about marrying whoever could beat her in a fair contest of strength. By the third day, Maya's story was in the local newspaper with a headline that read, "Local farm woman issues bold challenge to all comers." The article described Maya as the strongest woman in 3 counties and explained her unusual marriage proposal. Maya thought the newspaper story would be the end of it. She was wrong. Within a week, newspapers from bigger cities started picking up the story. A reporter from the state capitol drove all the way out to Maya's farm to interview her and take photographs. He asked her to demonstrate her strength by lifting heavy objects and showed her flexing her muscles for the camera. "This is quite a story, miss," the reporter said as he packed up his camera. "I think people all across the country are going to want to read about you." Maya felt uncomfortable with all the attention, but she tried to be polite. She had made her challenge public, and now she had to live with the consequences. The reporter was right. Within 2 weeks, Maya's story appeared in newspapers across the country. Headlines like "Prairie Amazon seeks her match" and "Strongest woman in America issues marriage challenge" appeared from New York to California. Then the letters started arriving. At first, it was just a few letters a day. Maya would find them in her mailbox, mostly from men claiming they could beat her easily. Some letters were polite and respectful, others were rude and boastful. A few were so strange that Maya threw them away without finishing them. But as more newspapers picked up her story, the letters kept coming. Soon Maya was getting dozens of letters every day. Her poor mailman, Mr. Roberts, had to make special trips to her farm just to deliver all the mail. "I've been delivering mail for 30 years, Mr. Roberts said, huffing and puffing as he carried another bag of letters to Maya's porch. "And I've never seen anything like this." Maya started reading the letters in the evenings after her farm work was done. Most of them were from men who claimed they could defeat her easily. They described their jobs and their strength, trying to convince her that they would win any contest she could devise. There were letters from lumberjacks in Oregon who claimed they could lift entire trees. Dock workers from New York wrote about moving heavy cargo all day long. Cowboys from Texas boasted about wrestling bulls and breaking wild horses. Factory workers, miners, construction workers, and farmers all wrote to say they were coming to challenge Maya. Some letters came with photographs. Maya would look at pictures of muscular men flexing their arms or lifting heavy weights. A few men sent newspaper clippings about strength contests they had won or records they had set. But not all the letters were from men wanting to challenge her. Maya also received letters from women across the country. Some supported her bold challenge and said they admired her courage. Others criticized her and said she was making all women look bad by acting in such an unladylike manner. "You're an inspiration to strong women everywhere," wrote one letter from a woman in Chicago. "Don't let anyone tell you that you're not feminine just because you're strong." Another letter from a woman in Boston was less supportive. "What you're doing is embarrassing to all decent women. A lady should be gentle and delicate, not showing off her strength like a man. Maya tried to read every letter, but there were so many that she couldn't keep up. She started sorting them into piles: serious challenges, obvious jokes, support letters, and criticism letters. Then the challengers started arriving in person. The first man to show up was a traveling circus strongman named Big Bill. He was enormous, with muscles bulging from his shirt and arms like tree trunks. He had driven all the way from 3 states away just to challenge Maya. "I heard about your little contest, lady," Big Bill said, standing in Maya's yard with his hands on his hips. "I've been the strongest man in my circus for 15 years. Time to put you in your place." A crowd gathered to watch as Maya and Big Bill faced off in an arm wrestling match. Maya had set up a table in her yard, and half the town came to see what would happen. The contest lasted less than 30 seconds. Maya slammed Big Bill's arm down so hard that the table shook. Big Bill stared at his defeated arm in shock, unable to believe what had just happened. "Impossible," he muttered as he walked back to his car. "Just impossible." Word of Maya's easy victory over Big Bill spread quickly, and more challengers arrived. There was Timber Jack, a lumberjack from the northern woods who claimed he could split a tree trunk with his bare hands. Maya beat him in a lifting contest, hoisting heavy logs that he couldn't even budge. Next came Iron Mike, a dock worker from the coast who said he could carry more weight than any person alive. Maya outlifted him so easily that Iron Mike left town the same day he arrived, too embarrassed to stay another night. A group of construction workers drove down from the city in a truck, each one convinced he would be the man to finally defeat Maya. She beat all 5 of them in different contests: arm wrestling, lifting, and even a contest to see who could carry the most weight the farthest distance. With each victory, Maya's fame grew. Newspaper reporters started showing up to watch her contests and write stories about her victories. Photographers took pictures of her defeating challenger after challenger. The stories spread to magazines and radio programs. "Maya defeats another challenger" became a regular headline in newspapers across the region. Radio announcers would give updates on her winning streak like they were reporting sports scores. Maya began to enjoy the attention, even though part of her worried that she might have made an impossible challenge. She was proud of her strength, and happy to finally get some recognition for her abilities. For years, people had made her feel strange and different because of her strength. Now, people were celebrating her for the same thing that used to make them uncomfortable. But as the months passed and Maya's winning streak continued, she started to wonder if any man would ever be able to defeat her. She had beaten strong men, athletes, workers, and fighters. Each victory made her more famous, but it also made her wonder if she would ever find the husband she had promised to marry. The prize money that people offered kept growing. Some challengers brought hundreds of dollars, hoping the money would motivate them to try harder. Local businesses started sponsoring the contests, hoping to get their names in the newspaper stories. Maya's farm became a tourist attraction. People would drive from hours away just to see the famous strong woman and maybe catch a glimpse of one of her contests. Maya started charging admission to watch the challenges, and she used the money to improve her farm and help her neighbors. But despite all the excitement and attention, Maya sometimes felt lonely in the evenings when all the visitors were gone. She had proven she was incredibly strong, but she still hadn't found what she was really looking for: someone who could love her for who she was, not just someone who wanted to defeat her or gawk at her strength. As winter approached and the challenges continued, Maya began to wonder if her bold promise had been a mistake. She had wanted to find love, but instead she had found fame. She had more money and attention than ever before, but she was still sleeping alone in her farmhouse every night, still eating dinner by herself, still wondering if she would ever meet someone who could see past her strength to the woman she really was inside. 6 months had passed since Maya's bold challenge at the general store. The excitement was starting to die down. Fewer challengers were coming to her farm, and the newspaper reporters had moved on to other stories. Maya had defeated 43 men in various contests of strength, and people were beginning to think that maybe no one could beat her. Maya was actually feeling relieved. She had enjoyed the attention at first, but now she was tired of being treated like a carnival attraction. She wanted to get back to her normal life of running her farm and taking care of her animals. Maybe, she thought, it was time to accept that she would never find a husband through her challenge. On a quiet Tuesday morning in early spring, Maya was feeding her chickens when she heard footsteps on her gravel driveway. She looked up, expecting to see another reporter, or maybe a neighbor coming to visit. Instead, she saw Mr. Roberts, the mailman, walking toward her with a single letter in his hand. "Morning, Maya," he said, tipping his hat. "Just one letter today. That's a change, isn't it?" Maya smiled. For months, Mr. Roberts had been delivering bags full of letters every day. Getting just one letter felt strange after all that mail. "Thank you, Mr. Roberts," Maya said, taking the letter. "I have to admit, it's nice to have a quiet morning for once." After Mr. Roberts left, Maya sat on her porch steps to read the letter. The envelope was made of expensive paper, much nicer than the usual letters she received. Her name and address were written in careful, neat handwriting that looked almost like art. Maya opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The letter was short, unlike the long, boastful letters most challengers sent. It said, simply, "Dear Miss Maya, I have read about your challenge in the newspapers. I accept your offer to compete in a contest of strength. I will arrive at your farm on the 15th day of this month. I look forward to meeting you. Respectfully, David Chen." Maya read the letter 3 times. It was so different from all the others. There were no boasts about incredible strength, no descriptions of previous victories, no photographs or newspaper clippings. Just a simple, polite acceptance of her challenge. Maya looked at the calendar hanging by her kitchen window. The 15th was only 3 days away. She wondered what this David Chen would be like. His last name suggested he might be Chinese, but she couldn't be sure. The letter gave her no clues about his age, his job, or his strength. For some reason, this mysterious letter made Maya more curious than all the boastful challenges she had received. There was something about the simple, respectful tone that intrigued her. Most challengers wrote like they were already sure they would win. This man seemed different somehow. Maya spent the next 3 days wondering about David Chen. She found herself looking down the road more often than usual, wondering when he would arrive and what he would look like. She even cleaned her house and made sure her farm looked neat, though she wasn't sure why she bothered. On the morning of the 15th, Maya was working in her garden when she heard a car coming up her driveway. She stood up and wiped the dirt from her hands, expecting to see another big, muscular challenger stepping out of the vehicle. What she saw instead surprised her completely. A modest black car stopped in front of her house, and a man stepped out, who looked nothing like the other challengers who had come to her farm. He was of medium height, maybe 5 feet 8 inches tall, with a slim build that looked more like a teacher or shopkeeper than a strong man. He appeared to be in his early 40s, with black hair that was starting to show some gray at the temples. The man walked toward Maya with a calm, confident stride. He was wearing a simple but clean suit, and he carried himself with a dignity that impressed Maya immediately. When he got close enough, he smiled politely and extended his hand. "Miss Maya," he said in a quiet voice with just a trace of an accent. "I am David Chen. Thank you for agreeing to see me." Maya shook his hand, still surprised by his appearance. His grip was firm but not aggressive, and his eyes were kind and intelligent. She had expected another boastful strong man, but David Chen seemed more like a gentleman caller than a challenger. "Mr. Chen," Maya said, trying to hide her confusion. "I have to say, you're not what I was expecting." David smiled. "I imagine not. Most of your challengers have probably been quite different from me." "They have been," Maya admitted. "Can I ask you something? What makes you think you can defeat me? I've beaten lumberjacks, circus strongmen, construction workers, and workers. Men twice your size couldn't even come close to winning. David nodded thoughtfully. Size and strength are not always the same thing, Miss Maya. I have been studying martial arts and physical training for most of my life. I believe there are different kinds of strength, and not all of them come from big muscles. Maya was intrigued. No one had ever talked to her about strength this way before. Most challengers just flexed their muscles and bragged about how much weight they could lift. Would you like some coffee or water? Maya asked. We should probably discuss what kind of contest you have in mind. Coffee would be wonderful, thank you, David said. They sat on Maya's porch, drinking coffee and talking. Maya learned that David had traveled from San Francisco, a journey of over 1,000 miles. He owned a small business teaching martial arts and physical fitness to people who wanted to learn discipline along with strength. I read about your challenge in the newspaper, David explained. At first, I thought it was just another story about someone trying to get attention. But the more I read, the more I realized that you were serious. You're not just showing off your strength. You're looking for someone who can understand what it means to be truly strong. Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in months of challenges. This man seemed to understand her in a way that no one else had. He wasn't here just to prove he was stronger than a woman. He was here because he recognized something in her that others missed. Mr. Chen, Maya said, can I ask you a personal question? Are you married? David shook his head. No, I am not. Like you, I have found it difficult to meet someone who understands that physical strength is just one part of who a person is. Most people see my training and think I am either showing off or that I am strange for dedicating so much time to it. Maya nodded. She knew exactly what he meant. As the afternoon went on, Maya found herself enjoying David's company more than she had enjoyed anyone's company in a long time. He was intelligent and thoughtful. He asked her questions about her farm and her life, and he seemed genuinely interested in her answers. He didn't stare at her muscles or ask her to demonstrate her strength like most visitors did. When evening came, Maya invited David to stay for dinner. She cooked a simple meal, and they continued talking as they ate. David told her stories about his students and his travels. Maya shared stories about her farm and her father, who had taught her to be strong and independent. Miss Maya, David said as they finished eating, I want you to know that I have great respect for what you have accomplished. Running this farm, alone, defeating all those challengers, staying true to yourself despite what people say. These things take real courage. Maya felt her cheeks getting warm. It had been a long time since anyone had complimented her character rather than just her physical strength. Thank you, she said quietly. That means more to me than you know. David smiled. Tomorrow, we will have our contest. But tonight I want you to know that regardless of who wins, I am honored to have met you. You are a remarkable woman. That night, Maya lay in bed thinking about David Chen. He was unlike anyone she had ever met. She found herself hoping that their contest would be close, that it wouldn't be over in 30 seconds like most of her previous challenges. She wanted to see what this mysterious man was really capable of. For the first time since making her challenge, Maya felt nervous about a contest. Not because she was afraid of losing, but because she was afraid of what it might mean if she won too easily. David Chen had traveled 1,000 miles to meet her. He had shown her more respect and understanding in one day than most people showed her in a year. As Maya drifted off to sleep, she wondered if David Chen might be the answer to her challenge that she had been hoping for all along. Maya woke up before dawn on the day of her contest with David. She had barely slept, her mind racing with thoughts about what the day would bring. She made her coffee extra strong and sat on her porch watching the sun come up, trying to calm her nerves. David appeared from the small guest room in her barn where he had spent the night. Maya had offered him the room because the nearest hotel was 30 miles away. He looked refreshed and peaceful, as if he had slept perfectly well. Good. "Morning, Maya," he said, joining her on the porch. "It's a beautiful day for our contest." "Good morning," Maya replied, pouring him a cup of coffee. "I have to admit, I'm more nervous about today than I've been about any of my previous contests." David smiled gently. "Nervousness can be good. It means this matters to you. It matters to me too." By 10 o'clock in the morning, word had spread through town that Maya's contest with the mysterious stranger was about to begin. People started arriving at her farm in cars, on horseback, and even on foot. Soon, Maya's front yard was filled with more people than had ever gathered there before. Maya was surprised by the size of the crowd. Word must have traveled fast. She saw familiar faces from town mixed with strangers who had driven from neighboring counties. Even some of the men she had previously defeated had returned to watch this contest. "Quite a crowd," David observed, looking out at the sea of faces. "I didn't expect this many people," Maya said. "Are you bothered by having an audience?" "Not at all," David replied. "Sometimes it's good for people to witness something important." Big Bill, the circus strongman who had been Maya's first challenger, pushed through the crowd to get a closer. "Look at David." He looked the smaller man up and down with obvious skepticism. "You're joking, right?" Big Bill called out. "This little guy thinks he can beat Maya? I'm twice his size and she crushed me like I was a child." David turned to face Big Bill calmly. "Size isn't everything, friend. Sometimes the biggest victories come from the most unexpected places." The crowd murmured with interest. Most people seemed to agree with Big Bill's assessment. David looked so ordinary compared to the huge, muscular men who had challenged Maya before. Maya cleared her throat to get everyone's attention. "Before we begin," she announced to the crowd, "Mr. Chen has a special request about the format of our contest." David stepped forward. "Thank you, Maya. I would like to propose 3 different challenges instead of just one. I believe true strength shows itself in many ways, not just in raw power." The crowd buzzed with curiosity. Maya's previous contests had all been simple arm wrestling matches or lifting competitions. "What did you have in mind?" Maya asked. "First, a test of lifting strength," David explained. "Second, a test of balance and control. Third, a test of endurance. If you win 2 out of 3, you win overall. If I win 2 out of 3, I win." Maya considered this. It was different from her usual contests, but it seemed fair. "All right," she agreed. "I accept your terms." The crowd gathered in a circle around Maya's yard. Several men brought heavy objects from around the farm to use for the lifting contest. They settled on using large stones that Maya's father had collected over the years for building walls. "The lifting contest will be simple," David announced. "We each lift stones of increasing weight until one of us cannot complete a lift. The person who lifts the heaviest stone wins this round." Maya felt confident about this challenge. Lifting heavy objects was something she did every day on her farm. She had defeated every previous challenger easily in lifting contests. They started with stones that weighed about 50 pounds. Both Maya and David lifted them easily. The crowd watched as they moved to heavier and heavier stones. At 100 pounds, David was still lifting smoothly. At 150 pounds, Maya began to realize that David was much stronger than he looked. When they reached stones weighing 200 pounds, Maya felt the first sign of real strain. David lifted his stone with effort, but he completed the lift successfully. Maya lifted hers as well, but she was breathing harder than usual. At 225 pounds, both of them struggled, but both completed their lifts. The crowd was getting excited now, realizing this might actually be a real contest. At 250 pounds, Maya felt her muscles burning as she lifted the massive stone. She completed the lift, but just barely. When David's turn came, he approached the stone with the same calm focus he had shown all morning. He bent down, found his grip, and lifted the stone smoothly above his head. Maya stared in amazement. David had just outlifted her, something no man had ever done before. "Mr. Chen wins the first challenge," Maya announced to the crowd. Her voice was steady, but inside she felt a mixture of shock and excitement. For the balance challenge, David set up a series of tests that required them to maintain their position while holding weights in difficult positions. They had to stand on one foot while holding stones above their heads, walk across a narrow beam while carrying heavy objects, and hold challenging poses for extended periods. Maya had always been strong, but she had never focused on balance and control the way David obviously had. His movements were precise and graceful, like a dancer or martial artist. Maya was strong enough to complete the challenges, but David made them look effortless. "Mr. Chen wins the second challenge as well," Maya announced when they finished. The crowd was buzzing with excitement now. Maya was down 2-0, something that had never happened before. Maya felt strange emotions swirling inside her. She should have been upset about losing, but instead she felt something she had never experienced before. Respect for someone who was truly her equal, or maybe even her superior. For the endurance challenge, David proposed that they each hold heavy stones above their heads and see who could maintain the position longest. Maya chose this as her best chance to win a round, since her farm work had given her incredible endurance. They each took stones weighing 175 pounds and lifted them above their heads. The crowd gathered around, watching as both Maya and David held their positions. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. Both were still holding strong. Maya felt the familiar burn in her muscles that she knew she could push through. But when she looked at David, she saw the same determined focus she felt in herself. 20 minutes passed. Maya's arms were shaking now, but David looked like he could hold his position all day. 30 minutes. 45 minutes. The crowd was amazed that both contestants were still holding their stones. At 53 minutes, Maya felt her strength giving out. Her arms were trembling uncontrollably, and she knew she couldn't hold on much longer. She looked at David one more time and saw something in his eyes that surprised her, not triumph, but concern for her well-being. At 55 minutes, Maya's arms finally gave out. She lowered her stone safely to the ground, breathing hard, but not injured. David immediately lowered his stone as well, though he probably could have held it longer. "Mr. Chen wins all 3 challenges," Maya announced to the stunned crowd. "Mr. Chen is the winner of our contest." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Some people looked shocked that Maya had finally been defeated. Others seemed excited to have witnessed such an amazing contest. But Maya barely heard the crowd. She was looking at David, who was walking toward her with the same gentle smile he had worn all day. "Maya," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "That was the most incredible display of strength I have ever seen. You are everything I hoped you would be, and more." Maya felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness or disappointment. For the first time in her life, she had met someone who was stronger than her, but more importantly, someone who respected her strength and understood what it meant to her. "David," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I think I understand now why you came all this way." David nodded. "I didn't come here to defeat you, Maya. I came here to find someone who would understand me the way I understand you. I came here to find my equal." As the crowd slowly dispersed, still talking excitedly about what they had witnessed, Maya and David sat together on her porch. Maya realized that losing this contest felt more like winning than any of her previous victories had felt. For the first time since making her bold challenge, Maya understood that she hadn't been looking for someone to defeat her. She had been looking for someone who could match her spirit, her dedication, and her understanding of what true strength really meant. As the last of the crowd left Maya's farm that evening, she and David sat together on her porch watching the sunset. Both were tired from their intense contest, but neither wanted the day to end. Maya kept looking at David, still amazed by what had happened. "I have to ask you something," Maya said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "How did you know you could beat me? Every newspaper article said I was unbeatable. 43 men tried and failed." David smiled and took a sip of the lemonade Maya had made for them. "I didn't know for certain that I could win, but I knew that you hadn't faced anyone who understood strength the way I do. Most of your challengers relied only on muscle power. I've spent 20 years learning that real strength comes from the harmony between body, mind, and spirit." Maya nodded slowly. "I felt that today. When we were competing, it didn't feel like you were trying to overpower me. It felt like you were showing me something I had never seen before." "That's exactly right," David said. "In my culture, we believe that the strongest person isn't necessarily the one who can lift the most weight. The strongest person is the one who has perfect control over their strength and uses it wisely." They sat quietly for a moment, both thinking about the day's events. Maya realized she felt different than she had ever felt before. For months, she had been dreading the day someone would finally defeat her, thinking it would be embarrassing or disappointing. Instead, she felt excited and hopeful. "David," Maya said carefully, "when I made my challenge, I promised to marry whoever could beat me. Did you come here because of that promise?" David looked at her seriously. "I came here because I read about a strong woman who was brave enough to challenge the world to find her equal. The marriage promise was just words on paper. What interested me was the person behind those words." Maya felt her heart beating faster. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I've been looking for someone like you my whole life," David said. "Someone who understands that being strong isn't just about physical power. Someone who knows what it feels like to be different from everyone around you because of your abilities. Someone who won't be afraid of who I really am." Maya turned to face David completely. "Tell me about who you really are." David was quiet for a long moment, looking out at Maya's farm. "I came to America from China when I was 15 years old. My family sent me here to get an education and build a better life. I worked in restaurants and laundries to pay for school, but I also continued studying the martial arts my grandfather had taught me." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "In my homeland, physical and mental discipline are respected. But here, people often think martial arts are just about fighting or showing off. I've spent years trying to find people who understand that it's really about becoming the best version of yourself." Maya listened carefully, understanding exactly what David meant. "That's how I've felt about my strength my whole life. People either fear it or they think it's just for show. They don't understand that it's part of who I am." "Exactly," David said. "When I read about your challenge, I realized you were someone who might understand me. You weren't just showing off your strength. You were looking for someone who could match not just your physical abilities, but your spirit." As the stars began to appear in the sky, Maya made a decision that surprised even her. "David, I want to honor my promise. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Will you marry me?" David's face lit up with a smile that made Maya's heart skip. "Maya, I was hoping you would ask. Yes, I will marry you. But not because I won a contest. I'll marry you because in one day, you've shown me more understanding and respect than I've found in 20 years of searching." Maya felt tears of happiness running down her cheeks. "I can't believe this is happening. Yesterday I thought I might never find someone who could love me for who I really am. I love you for exactly who you are," David said, taking her hand. "Your strength, your independence, your courage, your kind heart. All of it." 3 months later, Maya and David were married in a simple ceremony at the little church in town. Most of the townspeople attended, including many of the men Maya had defeated in previous contests. Big Bill, the circus strongman, even served as one of the ushers. "I still can't believe that little guy beat you," Big Bill whispered to Maya before the ceremony. "But I can see he makes you happy, and that's what matters." Maya's sister Lily was her maid of honor, crying tears of joy throughout the entire service. "I'm so happy you found someone who sees how wonderful you are," Lily told Maya as they prepared for the ceremony. David had invited his teacher from San Francisco to be his best man, an elderly Chinese gentleman who had taught David most of what he knew about martial arts and philosophy. The old teacher spoke with Maya before the ceremony and told her she was gaining not just a husband, but a true partner in every sense of the word. After their wedding, Maya and David combined their lives in beautiful ways. David moved his martial arts school to Maya's town, setting up classes in the barn that Maya had converted for him. Maya continued running her farm, but now she had David's help and wisdom. David taught Maya new ways to use her strength. He showed her exercises and techniques that made her even stronger than before, but also gave her better control and balance. Maya taught David about farming and the satisfaction of working with the land and caring for animals. Together, they started a unique training program that combined David's martial arts knowledge with Maya's practical strength training. Young people from all over the region came to learn from them. They taught students that true strength came from discipline, respect, and understanding your own capabilities. "Strength without wisdom is just showing off," David would tell their students. "Wisdom without strength is just words, but when you combine them, you become truly powerful." Maya discovered that teaching others was just as fulfilling as proving her own strength had been. She loved seeing young women learn that they could be strong and feminine at the same time. She also enjoyed teaching young men that real strength meant respecting others, not just overpowering them. Their marriage was everything Maya had hoped it would be. David never tried to diminish her strength or make her feel like she should be weaker. Instead, he celebrated her abilities and encouraged her to keep growing stronger. Maya never felt like she had to hide who she was or pretend to be less capable than she really was. 5 years after their wedding, Maya and David had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. Maya continued her farm work throughout her pregnancies, and David supported her completely. They raised their children to understand that strength comes in many forms and that everyone has their own unique gifts. Their oldest daughter inherited Maya's physical strength and loved helping with the heavy farm work. Their son was more like David, preferring activities that required balance and mental focus. Their youngest daughter was interested in both physical training and academic studies, planning to become a doctor who specialized in helping athletes. Maya often thought about the night she had made her bold challenge in the general store. She had been angry and frustrated, feeling like no one would ever understand her. She never could have imagined that her moment of defiance would lead to finding the love of her life. "Do you ever regret making that challenge?" David asked her. One evening, as they watched their children playing in the yard, Maya considered the question seriously. "Never," she said. "Making that challenge was the bravest thing I ever did, even though I didn't realize it at the time. It brought me you, and it brought me a life I never knew I wanted." David smiled and put his arm around his wife. "I'm grateful every day that you were brave enough to challenge the world. And I'm grateful the world was smart enough to let me find you." As Maya watched her children playing, she realized that her story had become something much bigger than just finding a husband. She had found a true partner, built a loving family, and created a legacy that would help other strong people find their own paths. The little girl who had once felt like an outsider because of her unusual strength had grown into a woman who used that strength to build something beautiful. Maya's challenge had started as a desperate search for acceptance, but it had become a celebration of what was possible when 2 people truly understood and supported each other. Years later, when people asked Maya about her famous challenge and The contest that changed her life, she would always smile and say the same thing. I thought I was looking for someone strong enough to beat me. What I found was someone strong enough to love me exactly as I am. And that, she would add, turned out to be the greatest victory of all.